Wigton Windfarm is more than a premier supplier of wind energy. At Wigton's state-of-the-art renewable energy lab, energy professionals, academics and tertiary students are trained in a range of subjects such as photovoltaic technologies, wind, small-scale hydro and bioenergy. And these students will become forerunners in the sector and aid its continued expansion. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. The financial and environmental costs of oil can be high. The clean energy generated at Wigton Windfarm reduces the need for fuel imported by 96,000 barrels annually, which translates to $4.9 million saved every year. And this saved foreign exchange can find its way to you through beneficial programs and projects. Because Wigton Windfarm is working to secure Jamaica's future. Jamaica's beauty is legendary, and we have to do our part to preserve our environment. The green energy generated at Wigton Windfarm is better for our environment than fossil fuels because it decreases the amount of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide that are released into the atmosphere. Wigton's clean energy reduces Jamaica's carbon dioxide emissions by 119,000 tons, which lessens the disastrous effects of climate change, like high temperatures and floods. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. Wigton Windfarm is more than a premier supplier of wind energy. At Wigton's state-of-the-art renewable energy lab, energy professionals, academics and tertiary students are trained in a range of subjects such as photovoltaic technologies, wind, small-scale hydro and bioenergy. And these students will become forerunners in the sector and aid its continued expansion. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. The financial and environmental costs of oil can be high. The clean energy generated at Wigton Windfarm reduces the need for fuel imported by 96,000 barrels annually, which translates to $4.9 million saved every year. And this saved foreign exchange can find its way to you through beneficial programs and projects. Because Wigton Windfarm is working to secure Jamaica's future. Jamaica's beauty is legendary, and we have to do our part to preserve our environment. The green energy generated at Wigton Windfarm is better for our environment than fossil fuels because it decreases the amount of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide that are released into the atmosphere. Wigton's clean energy reduces Jamaica's carbon dioxide emissions by 119,000 tons, which lessens the disastrous effects of climate change like high temperatures and floods. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. Wigton Windfarm is more than a premier supplier of wind energy. At Wigton's state-of-the-art renewable energy lab, energy professionals, academics and tertiary students are trained in a range of subjects such as photovoltaic technologies, wind, small-scale hydro and bioenergy. And these students will become forerunners in the sector and aid its continued expansion. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. The financial and environmental costs of oil can be high. The clean energy generated at Wigton Windfarm reduces the need for fuel imported by 96,000 barrels annually, which translates to $4.9 million saved every year. And this saved foreign exchange can find its way to you through beneficial programs and projects. Because Wigton Windfarm is working to secure Jamaica's future. Jamaica's beauty is legendary, and we have to do our part to preserve our environment. The green energy generated at Wigton Windfarm is better for our environment than fossil fuels because it decreases the amount of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide that are released into the atmosphere. Wigton's clean energy reduces Jamaica's carbon dioxide emissions by 119,000 tons, which lessens the disastrous effects of climate change like high temperatures and floods. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. Wigton Windfarm is more than a premier supplier of wind energy. At Wigton's state-of-the-art renewable energy lab, energy professionals, academics and tertiary students are trained in a range of subjects such as photovoltaic technologies, wind, small-scale hydro and bioenergy. And these students will become forerunners in the sector and aid its continued expansion. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Oliver Holmes, Chairman of Wigton Windfarm Limited, and chairman of this, the 2022 Annual General Meeting of the company. Mrs. Treasurer, our finance manager and company secretary, will perform the function of secretary of today's AGM. Mrs. Treasurer, please confirm that the requirement for a quorum of 3 shareholders, as stipulated by Article 64 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, has been met.
Chairman, I so confirm there are 44 shareholders attending online.
Thank you for confirming that we have a quorum, Mrs. Treasurer. The meeting is now called to order. I now invite you all to join us in prayer, led by Mrs. Treasurer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we are gathered here this morning at the annual general meeting of Wigton Windfarm Limited, Father, we ask for your guidance over this meeting, and we ask, Lord God, that even as chairman, take us through this meeting, that, Lord, you will be the lead on this meeting. Lord, we pray as well that you will take full control over every technical equipment, every person making their presentations. And Father, we want to tell you thanks for the shareholders and other non-shareholders that joined us this morning. Father, we thank you for these and other mercies. In Jesus' holy and precious name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mrs. Treasurer. In keeping with the company's Articles of Incorporation, the meeting is being held in a virtual manner with shareholders online and live streaming via YouTube and Facebook. We decided to host the 2022 AGM in a virtual format to ensure a greater ability for you, our shareholders, to participate despite your physical location. In light of the electronic nature of the meeting, I ask our company secretary to take us through the guidelines for the meeting today.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. We kindly ask that you adhere to the following protocols. During the meeting, shareholders on the virtual platform will not be able to speak, and all microphones will be muted. However, as usual, the questions and/or comments of shareholders will be addressed during the Q&A segment of the meeting, and during that segment, shareholders will be able to ask questions or make comments using the Q&A feature, the icon for which is at the bottom of your screens. You are encouraged to submit your questions prior to the Q&A segment of the AGM by way of email to wigton.info@wwfja.com. That is wig.info@wwfja.com, or by clicking the Q&A option at the bottom of your screens and type in your questions in the text box that will appear. Responses will be provided, time permitting, in the Q&A session, but for those questions that are not answered, the responses will be posted on our website after the AGM. In registering for the meeting, persons would have registered as shareholders. As is customary, and during the meeting, shareholders or their duly appointed proxies will be able to move and second motions and vote once motions have been moved and seconded. After each motion is moved and seconded, shareholders will be able to vote by selecting the for or against button that will appear on the bottom of your screens. 45 seconds will be allowed for the casting of votes, after which the results for each motion will be displayed on your screens. If you voted prior to the meeting, there is no need for you to vote during the meeting. Shareholders who wish to move or second a motion may do so by clicking the Raise Hand button at the bottom of your screen. In the event of any technical challenges, you may reach out to our team by clicking the Help icon to the left of your screens for assistance. Additionally, if we encounter any technical difficulties with the webcast during the meeting, please remain logged on and we will resume as soon as possible. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available online and the link uploaded to our website so you may access same. Forward-looking statements may be made in the presentations today. Please note that the actions and results may differ. Every effort has been made to facilitate your participation in the most convenient way given the format of the meeting. We thank you in advance for complying with these guidelines and we look forward to a very successful meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Treasurer. On behalf of the Wigton Board of Directors, I take this opportunity to thank you, our shareholders, and the dedicated and committed Wigton team for your unwavering and resolute belief in and contribution to our company. We extend our sincere appreciation to the directors who have dedicated quality time to oversee the affairs of the company at the board level, as well as through the various subcommittees which support the board. All directors are present online, and I take pride in introducing them to you. Mr. Omar Azan, Mr. Dennis Chung, Chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee, Mr. Nigel Davey, Mrs. M. Georgia Gibson Henlin, Chairperson of the Corporate Governance Committee, Mr. Hugh Johnson, Mr. Gregory Shirley, Chairman of the Nominations, Compensation and Human Resource Committee, Mrs. Jacqueline Stewart Leckler, Mr. Dan Theok, and Mrs. Mariam McIntosh Robinson, Chairperson of the Finance and Investment Committee. We specifically highlight that our director, Mr. Gregory Shirley, will be retiring from the board in May 2023, in keeping with the mandatory retirement age of directors under the company's Articles of Incorporation. He was appointed the director of the company on January 1, 2019, and currently serves on the Audit and Risk Committee of the board as a member, and the Nominations, Compensation and Human Resource Committee as chairman. He has served in all respects with excellence. We thank him for his guidance, support, and contribution during his tenure, and wish him all the very best in his future endeavors. The notice of the AGM, which was advised of the electronic format, as well as all necessary information on the matters for consideration at this meeting, was published on Wigton's website and the Jamaica Stock Exchange's website. An advisory was also sent via email to the shareholders' email addresses on record and published in the Gleaner and the Jamaica Observer. Announcements were also made via Wigton's social media pages as well. May we have a motion that the notice convening the meeting be taken as read. And shareholders online, you're reminded to use the raise hand feature to move and second motions. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion having been moved by Mr. Theomore Brown and seconded by Mr. Marlon C. Blake, shareholders, may we now ask that you vote on the motion by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen in favor of or against the motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in, and as can be seen on your screen, the resolution is carried. I note for the benefit of our shareholders that the minutes of the 2021 AGM held on January 12th, 2022 are available and may be accessed from the company's website. I now turn matters over to our Managing Director, Mr. Erlington Barrett, who will present his report on the performance of your company during the financial year ended March 31st, 2022. Mr. Barrett?
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our annual general meeting for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022. I acknowledge our board chairman, Oliver Holmes, our directors who are online, our company secretary, Mrs. Sean Treasure, and to all our shareholders and participants online, a special welcome to you all. As we make every effort to transition Wigton to a company with greater profitability, we remain anchored to our core values to be very committed to the Wigton team and the company 2035 vision. Wigton core values are captured under the theme Wigton Arise, representing a progression whereby the company moves to higher heights in its operation, investment, profitability, and greater value to our shareholders. The core value of the companies are accountability, respect, teamwork, integrity, safety first, and environmental responsibilities. These values have and will continue to drive all the initiatives and activities of the company. The commitment of the Wigton team, which consists of our board of directors, the management team, and staff members, cannot be overstated. The performance of the company to date and the achievement of its vision is vested in the board of directors for the support and guidance they will provide. The management team and all staff members for their continued dedication, resilience in delivering results. The Wigton team has proven themselves and continue to deliver for the company. In 2022, Wigton undertook a robust assessment of the direction in which the company must go and accordingly developed a 4-year strategic plan guided by 2035 vision of becoming a profitable regional conglomerate with successful clean energy and other investments. Our clean energy and other investment portfolio started their growth path during 2021-22 period. Wigton entered a joint venture arrangement with innovative energy company DBA IEC SPEI Limited, formerly IEC SPEI Limited, through which both companies completed the Norman Manley International Airport 2 megawatt solar project with profitable returns. Wigton and IEC continue to collaborate on green energy projects, and recently in March of 2023, signed a contract with the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries for the design, supply, and installation of solar photovoltaic systems, plus battery storage at several locations. These initiatives will be actively pursued in line with our vision. During the period, Wigton also acquired a 21% share in Flash Holding Limited. Flash and its subsidiary, Flash Motors Company Limited, have been established to distribute electric vehicles regionally. To date, Flash has sold 53 electric vehicles in Jamaica and has been successfully installing charging stations throughout the island. Another recent investment undertaken by the company was the acquisition of land at Ferrypen, St. Andrew. The purchase represents Wigton's first real estate investment, which was acquired below assessed market value and which will be commercially developed based on guidance from experienced professionals in the real estate sector. There will be more on this in subsequent quarterly updates in the 2023-24 financial year. In addition to the fulfillment of the company's mission of delivering long-term shareholders' value, Wigton remains committed to facilitating a positive social and environmental impact on our stakeholders. Having the understanding that education is the bedrock of any healthy and prosperous country, Wigton's main initiative during the year was the donation of computer tablets to students at the Cross Keys High School in Manchester. Wigton will sustain a culture of giving back to the Jamaican community and will continue to focus its corporate social responsibilities initiatives in the areas of education, crime prevention, community development, and environmental protection. I will briefly outline the results for the year ending March 31st, 2022, and share highlights of the results for the 9-month period ending December 31st, 2022 of the financial year ending March 31st, 2023. Wigton ended the financial year March 31st, 2022 with a net profit of $472.1 million. This reflects a 40% decrease over the $792.7 million earned the prior year, ending March 31st, 2021. While this represents a significant decrease, it was due mainly to lower than projected wind speed that was experienced during the year and a lower contractual rate per kilowatt hour now being received in respect of the Wigton Phase 2. Sales revenue from the generation of energy was $2.05 billion, a 20.9% decrease when compared to the $2.59 billion earned in the prior year. Total revenue for the financial year was $2.3 billion, representing an 18% decrease when compared to the amount generated in the previous year. Notwithstanding the decrease in total revenue, all of the other incomes component reflected an increase. Interest income from $91.2 million to $131.1 million, reflecting a 43.8% increase. Income from the Renewable Energy Training Lab was $7.5 billion, a 360.5% increase, as the offering of courses at the training center resumed after the COVID-19 pandemic measures were relaxed. Wigton ended 2022 financial year with total assets of $11 billion, an increase of $200 million over the prior year. This was due mainly to the profitability of the business, which in turn aided the growth of the company's cash and cash equivalent, which stood at $3.8 billion at the end of the period, an increase of $600 million or 18%. Total liabilities were $6.5 billion, a decrease of 1% when compared to the previous year. Total expense were $1.4 billion, which is 11.5% or $147 million above the amount incurred in the previous year. The increase in expense year on year occurred as a result of increase in directors' fees. Insurance for plant and equipment went up by 32.6%. Other expenses increased by $31 million or 39.7%. Staff costs also saw an increase. The increase was a result of benefits paid, costs associated with redundancy exercise, and inflationary adjustment, which was made on salary for the period. Shareholders' equity at the year end was $4.5 billion, or 6.8% above the previous year, equity of $4.2 billion. Earnings per share was 4 cents, a decrease when compared to prior year of 7 cents. In an effort to ensure that return on investment to shareholders and consistent, considering the profitability of the company during the year, a special dividend totaling $200 million was paid to shareholders. To further ensure a robust management of the company finances and reduce the debt obligation under improved financial terms, Wigton sought and obtained the approval of its bondholders to restate bonds B, C, and D. The bond restatement was successfully completed on March 14, 2022, with the establishment of a new bond A and B, which will result in interest savings to the company of $682.4 million over the life of the restated bond. During the bond restatement exercise in March 2022, Wigton obtained a Jamaica A local currency rating on the Jamaica national scale and a Carib BBB local currency rating on the regional scale in relationship to its bond A and B by the Caribbean Information and Credit Rating Services Limited. These ratings were further reaffirmed in December 2022 on the basis of a stable outlook and objective assessment of Wigton's creditworthiness relative to other debt issuing entities locally and regionally. Turning now a little to the 9 months period ending December 31st, 2022. Wigton recorded an increase in its performance with total revenue of $2 billion, a 13.6% increase when compared to similar period for the last year, 2021. The improved performance during the period resulted from higher production. This was influenced by higher wind regime experience and improved operating efficiencies. An operating profit of $992.4 million has been achieved, reflecting a $276.9 million increase compared to the corresponding period for 2021. While net profit after tax was $503.8 billion, an 81.6% increase compared to the prior year. Earnings per stock unit for the period was approximately 5 cents, which translates to greater return to you, our shareholders. The company accordingly continued its solid track record of profitability and sustainable return matrix. We have gone through 2 tumultuous years of the COVID-19 pandemic, and as we speak, the heart-rending situation in Ukraine continues. This, coupled with the high cost of living, are also creating new challenges. These global matters are not without negative impact on Jamaica, the company and its operation, and the execution of its plans. The company has had to deal with limitation on the pace at which it would like to progress with its initiatives. And importantly, the supply chain and the high cost are still having negative impact. Wigton is nevertheless resolute in its momentum to accelerate the growth of the company and is focused on diversifying its business to all areas of energy, clean technology, and other investments. This diversification is not limited to Jamaica, and as the company plans to expand into other regional countries. This we will do through various strategies, initiatives, which you can already see are coming to fruition locally. Progress is by no means a straight line. And growth in a company is not always linear. However, Wigton is clear on the end goal and the aim to achieve its goals. In the near future, Wigton anticipates the finalization of discussions on the repowering of Phase 1 operation. As you're all aware, the Ministry of Energy issued a new 20-year generation license in November 2022, following a cabinet approval. This project, once established as financially viable and sustainable, will ensure that there is no loss of revenue from the existing Phase 1 operation. Wigton also remains ready for long-anticipated call by the government for Jamaica for renewable energy to be added to the grid. Wigton understands that certain initiatives may be undertaken on its own and that there are others which will require support and participation and partnerships. To this end, the partnerships that have been forged to date will be nurtured and new partnerships will be sought to continue to drive the business of the company towards further growth and profitability. Shareholders, you are reminded that Wigton is your company and it's a long-term investment that is well positioned for growth. We are in a business on which the world is now more focused than ever before, so the future looks bright. We are optimistic about the future of Wigton and look forward to what lies ahead with great anticipation. The internal strategies, initiatives, the 2035 vision, the core value, and our dedicated team position us well to deliver steady and consistent growth going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrett, for your excellent presentation. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take the next 30 minutes to answer your questions. We will do our best to respond to all questions during the time allotted. However, if we are unable to respond to any questions, the answers to those questions will be placed on our website after the meeting. Questions may be submitted to the email address wigton.info@wwfja.com or by typing your questions or comments in the Q&A tab up to the time of the close of this meeting. I will read the questions you pose and direct them to our managing director, who will answer the questions with the assistance of his team as is necessary. So here we have the first question, which is posed by Ms. Yvonne Wright. And the question is, I noticed the stock is only at 72 cents. What is being done to improve the stock? Mr. Barrett?
Thank you, Chair. Yvonne Wright, some of the answers to that question that have been in the presentation you just would have heard. But the share price or stock price is normally driven by growth in a company and its profitability. So there is no magical wand to wave to say you can take the price up today or tomorrow. The company has to grow. The company profitability has to increase. And this is what the team at Wigton have been working at for the last couple of years. Certainly you will recall we're talking about the pandemic and how it slowed the pace, not just of Wigton, but I think the world went on pause for 2 years. So going forward, I think we're all optimistic that we are over the worst of COVID, and great expectation is there for Wigton and the growth of the share price.
Mr. Barrett. Our second question comes from Sandra Rohn, and the question is it only in the year 2021 that dividends weren't paid to the shareholders? Mr. Barrett?
Sandra, the answer to that is yes. We paid dividend in 2021, in 2020 and 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Our next question from Horace Bertel Hall reads, I would like to know if Wigton has gotten any money from investing in flash motors. If so, how much? I would like to also know, with respect to the parcel of land which was recently purchased by Wigton, what is the intended use? And was a feasibility study done prior to acquiring this land? Why was so much money spent to acquire it? What is so special about this land? Over to you, Mr. Barrett.
Taking them in order they were presented, the investment in flash motors was not intended to have a return in this year. It's expected to see positive returns in 2023-24 onward. As to the property that was procured at Ferry Pen, as I said, we'll talk more about that in the coming months, but certainly it is for development. If you know anything of the area at Ferry Pen, it is considered to be one of the prime future development area for Kingston and St. Andrew. If you look around Kingston, in a few years' time, I think most persons who live in this area will have to be walking to and from work or whatever chores they're taking on in a given day, because we're becoming so crowded. So that bit of land out there, we figure, was a prize acquisition, and certainly the company intend to develop in keeping with the plans for that property out there. Feasibility was done, and the price that was paid was market assessed to be a fair price, and may even be considered under what similar size lots in that location is going for. A good acquisition.
Our next question from Alexander Michael Williams reads, what is preventing Wigton from expanding their wind turbines to produce more electricity? Mr. Barrett?
Sir Alexander, the independent power producers, of which Wigton is one, is constrained by government regulations and guidelines. It's a regulated industry we are in. So there is no possibility of any of the independent power producers deciding that tomorrow they want to build a factory to produce power, and then they could go ahead and sell it. All power produced by the independent power producers must be sold to JPS. That's the law. Further, until the government makes a call for renewable energy or any other form of energy to be added to the grid, no independent power producer can go and produce energy unless they're going to use it for themselves. So Wigton is ready to do the expansion. Wigton have a project that we consider shovel ready, and this have to wait until when the government make a call for additional energy to the grid, whether it be renewable or fossil fuel. You would have heard from the government that they'll be looking very strongly for mainly renewable energy to be added to the grid. So Wigton is well poised to be participating in that call.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Our next question from David A. Rose reads, I saw that NEPA approved Wigton's environmental permit at Rose Hill, Manchester for renewable energy generation above 200 kilowatt hours. Is Wigton moving now to build a new phase or continue phase 1 past its useful life? Mr. Barrett?
So, the approval by NEPA is in relationship to the extension of license for the repowering of Wigton phase 1. Again, just to reiterate, until a call is made for additional energy to the grid, independent power producers like Wigton is not able to go build a plant. So what you saw there was the life extension for Wigton phase 1.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. And I note that there are a number of questions from Mr. Rose, and I suspect we also have other questions from our shareholders. So I will take three more questions from Mr. Rose, and give our other shareholders an opportunity for their questions to be answered. So the second question from Mr. Rose is, what does Wigton intend to build on the property purchased at Ferry? Now, Mr. Rose, I believe that the answer to that question has been given. So please, I'm sure you're listening. So we will accept that that question has indeed been answered. Third question from Mr. Rose is, can Wigton have these AGMs be made publicly available on YouTube? And indeed, we have made the AGM public, and in fact, it's being broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. So your question is simply answered in that manner, Mr. Rose. The AGM is indeed being made publicly available. And Mr. Rose's next question is, what was Wigton's JC Corporate Index score? And the responses to that question in 2020, 2021 financial year, the score was a BB, and in the financial year 2021-2022, our score was an A, or figuratively 84.25%. So we are at an A grade, Mr. Rose. And taking one more of Mr. Rose's question, how will Wigton be impacted by the reinsurance crisis and elevated costs for insuring the property? And I turn again to our Managing Director.
Mr. Rose, I imagine you asked that question because you realize of the literal crisis that's in the insurance industry based on recent catastrophe, whether we put it as climate change or otherwise. But Wigton has been very aggressive and have worked very closely with our brokers. And we were managed this year during the crisis to have come out even better than last year in terms of the percentage increase that has been common in the industry and that came at us last year. For the current year that we are looking at insurance, we saw, and we are going to use the words cautiously, that a modest 19% increase. And we started our negotiation at 50%. But just based on the work that we do with our brokers and the good customer that they have seen us and how well we have managed to maintain our plant and guard against unforeseen circumstances, we were considered a good customer, and we figure we came out fairly well for what's going on in the industry now. So we are conscious of it, and we are looking, even as we speak, at all other methods of how we can ensure to keep the insurance down in this crisis in the industry.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Our next question comes from Randy Aird. And the question is there any favorable news coming from your attempts in regional expansion? Mr. Barrett?
We remain optimistic in the regional forays. And as you would well recognize that until we're close to signing a contract, we would not, it should not be considered prudent to start making announcement. But we remain optimistic that regional forays are looking that they could bear good fruits.
Thank you. And Mr. Aird posed a second question, which is, how is Wigton investing its cash? And do you plan to clear the debts early?
The cash that Wigton is holding on to and is investing, we have to be very cautious with it. If you know about the industry that we are in, it's capital intensive. And what you want to be able to do when you sit with your financiers to do new projects is that you come to the table with a reasonable amount of equity. And so, for as much as you may look at the balance sheet and see a certain amount of cash, it is being held as we are and doing short-term investments for the very reason that as a project becomes available to execute, we will be required to have a certain amount of equity. So it's a very delicate balancing game that we are going through, and you're not the only shareholder that have asked this question before.
Question from Raniel Brown. Can you elaborate on the partnership with Flash Motors? What is the vision of Wigton in navigating the EV landscape? Mr. Barrett?
As you recognize, electric vehicles are definitely the way of the future. If you look across the world, most of the major auto producers are setting themselves very, very tight timelines to move away from fossil fuel vehicles. So for transportation, ground transportation, and I even dare say air transportation, there are companies that are testing renewable fuels now for aircrafts. So for the electrical vehicles, it's not just Jamaica that the Flash Motors are intended to be in. It is across the Caribbean. And so Wigton with Flash Motors is extremely busy seeking to get into other markets across the Caribbean, from as far south as Guyana and Eastern Caribbean as well. So we are excited about the investment with Flash Motors, and we're looking forward to that being a material input to the company's revenue and profitability going forward.
A question from Donovan Lenworth Murphy. Would Wigton consider wholesaling solar equipment, thus reducing the cost to the average Jamaican who wants to get off the grid?
At this time, Wigton have not exhausted all of the possibilities from which revenue can come. I must say to you that as we speak, it's not a part of the portfolio that we plan to take on in the short term. But it doesn't say that should an opportunity arise tomorrow, that our team would not, vigorously do the due diligence and see whether it is making a sense. The retail of panels, however, the markup on it from what we know now is not exciting because our distributors can get straight to market. The likes of what Amazon and Alibaba has done across the world, that most consumers can get their product with minimal markup. So you wouldn't want to take on a project that is only going to be marginally profitable unless you're really, really forced to do so. So as we speak, it's not on the cards, but we don't throw anything under the bus until we have examined it thoroughly and let the figures speak for themselves.
Question from Lancelot White. I'm aware of Wigton making serious inquiry into the investment of castor bean farming from as far back as June 2022. There was also a renewed recent interest in castor bean production as announced by the Minister of Agriculture. Is Wigton still interested? Was there a secured market and guaranteed price for such product?
Wigton remains very active in that space, and certainly the process has taken much, much longer than we anticipated when we started the journey. But if you look back a little bit on the history of the castor oil market in Jamaica, different entities in Jamaica, led by the government on a lot of occasions, have struggled for the past 20 years with it. It is the distinct intent of Wigton to bring that long lag time to an end very shortly. If we go by the output from JAMPRO and other government agencies, the market is begging for Jamaican black castor oil. Wigton intend to be a significant player in that space. And prices that we are being told that's in the marketplace is exciting. We don't have a price now because we're not having that final information to go to the market. But the plans are moving apace. And we expect to be talking more about that in the months and years to come, in a positive way. Not to talk about we're planning to, but that we have done.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Question from Mark A. Edwards. What are your plans for the excess cash on the balance sheet? And do you have plans for paying out a higher dividend going forward? Again, in the interest of time, I believe Mr. Barrett adequately answered that question in an earlier question. So I interpret the question as being similar to a question asked before, and that was duly answered by our managing director. Question from Akisha Sewell. What objectives will Wigton be focusing on in this financial year? What activities brought in the most revenue last financial year?
The focus for Wigton, certainly for this financial year, will be to efficiently operate the existing plant to maximize revenue, to keep our expenses down, which would maximize our profit. And further, in terms of what activity brought in the most revenue last financial year, it would have been the sale of renewable energy to the grid. We speak, as you have heard before, about diversification of the business. We as a management team and a board are concerned of where our source of income is coming from. And so diversification will also be a focus for the financial year just started and going forward.
Mr. Barrett, we move on to a question from Donna Marie Faith Forrester. And the direct question is, will shareholders be paid a dividend this year and when?
That is always a decision for the board. And as you recognize, the answer to such a question, whether it's yea or nay, would first be shared with the Jamaica Stock Exchange before we would go public with that information. But rest assured that we are minutely, daily, weekly concerned about the welfare of our shareholders. And once there's an opportunity to recognize the investment of our shareholders, that definitely will be done.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We'll take the final question, which comes from Dwight Jackson. The question is, what is Wigton doing to cushion the company in case of a recession? So this will be our last response to questions in today's AGM. So, Mr. Barrett, I direct the question to you.
Chair, I suppose our shareholder is asking us to look into a crystal ball, but then that's what management and boards are supposed to do. Wigton has always remained nimble. Wigton has gone through, I can say, tougher financial times that we're now facing. And if you look at how we're structured, and maybe because of the business that we're in, you heard me comment earlier that the world is focused on renewable energy. You would have just seen in the press where the oil-producing countries have just decided they need to extort it a little bit more, and so they have cut back the production to take up the price of oil. You certainly will be seeing it reflected in your electricity bill shortly, and you certainly will be seeing it reflected at the gas pump. One area you will not see it reflected is the input from renewable energy, because we're blessed with the trade winds, and so we will continue to put renewable energy into the grid. But in terms of anticipating will the JPS take less energy from us, we don't see that as a possibility. It's really, they will say, give us all the energy you can produce from a source that is the cheapest going into the grid. So I don't think that we need to concern ourselves too much about bulletproofing ourselves against recession. We just need to get more renewable onto the grid. And that also will come from the help of the government in calling for more renewable to be put on the grid.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. And I'm told that we could take 2 more questions. First is from Shane Allison. Question is, with the opportunities afforded with newer wind turbines, does the current power purchase agreement allow Wigton to increase the output of phase 1, but replacing existing turbines with newer models? Mr. Barrett?
The license that has been granted for the replacement of or repowering of Wigton phase 1 specifically spells out 20.7 megawatts. It's a direct replacement. We will have to use the efficiency of new turbines in other ways in terms of improving the overall efficiency of the plant. But it's not a matter that you could say you're putting in a more efficient turbine, JPS take the power. This will have to be a negotiated position, and we are very busy with the offtake of the grid in seeing how we can maximize the output from newer turbines, because there are times where the newer turbines, you can tweak them consistently above the rated capacity. So we certainly will be looking to extract every kilowatt hour that's possible from new equipment that's being put in. Again, the government, as you know, is reviewing the entire electricity landscape, and I'm sure that they are listening, and they have been urged by independent power producers like us as to how guidelines are set for renewable energy going onto the grid. Because we as a country should aim to get every kilowatt hour available from our natural resources around us.
Thanks, Mr. Barrett. And are we taking a final question?
Yeah.
And the question is also coming from the same. The question reads, I heard during the presentation by Mr. Barrett that dividends have been paid to shareholders. However, since purchasing the shares from its initial offering, I have not received any dividends. Could you say the reason for this?
Sure.
Yes. And I'll ask Mrs. Treasurer to address this question, which comes from Denise Seeley.
Thank you, Chair. For something like that, what we will do is ask Ms. Seeley to just check with the JCSD, who is the registrar for Wigton Windfarm. What you can also do is to ensure that you fill out there's a form that the funds can be directly deposited to your account. So I'll use this opportunity for all shareholders to use that mode to avoid these circumstances. But there is also a possibility that that dividend check is at your post office.
And I assume, Mrs. Treasurer, that by checking with the JCSD, if there are unclaimed dividends, that Ms. Seeley would be able to confirm the existence of them and make arrangements to have them either sent to her account or delivered by a check.
Yes, Chair.
Yes. Shareholders, the time we allotted for questions and answers has been exhausted. But please be reminded that the answers to any questions that you may have posed that were not taken during the meeting will be posted on our website. So please visit the website and look for the responses to such questions. Shareholders, we now move to the auditor's report. The financial statements, along with the reports of the auditors and the directors thereon, were set out in the 2022 annual report of the company and were also circulated to the shareholders by way of the notice convening this meeting. We now invite Mrs. Tricia Ann Smith da Silva, partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, to present the auditor's report. Mrs. Smith da Silva.
Good afternoon, Chairman Holmes, Managing Director Mr. Barrett, Finance Manager and Company Secretary Mrs. Shawn Treasurer, Directors, shareholders, and all individuals attending online. Independent Auditor's Report. To the shareholders of Wigton Windfarm Limited. Report on the audit of the consolidated and standalone financial statements. Our opinion. In our opinion, the consolidated financial statements and the standalone financial statements give a true and fair view of the consolidated financial position of Wigton Windfarm Limited, the company, and its affiliate, together the group, and the standalone financial position of the company as at 31 March 2022, and of their consolidated and standalone financial performance and their consolidated and standalone cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, and with the requirements of the Jamaican Companies Act. What we have audited. The group's consolidated and standalone financial statements comprise the consolidated statement of financial position as at 31 March 2022, the consolidated statement of comprehensive income for the year then ended, the consolidated statement of changes in equity for the year then ended, the consolidated statement of cash flows for the year then ended, the company statement of financial position as at 31 March 2022, the company statement of comprehensive income for the year then ended, the company statement of changes in equity for the year then ended, the company statement of cash flows for the year then ended, and the notes to the consolidated and standalone financial statements, which include significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. Basis for opinion. We conducted our audit in accordance with International Standards on Auditing, ISOs. Our responsibility under those standards are further described in the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the consolidated and standalone financial statements section of our report. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. Independence. We are independent of the group in accordance with the International Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, including International Independent Standards, issued by the International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants, IESBA Code. We have fulfilled our ethical responsibilities in accordance with the IESBA Code. Audit scope. As part of designing our audit, we determined materiality and assessed the risk of material misstatement in the consolidated and standalone financial statements. In particular, we considered where management made subjective judgments, for example, in respect of significant accounting estimates that involved making assumptions and considering future events that are inherently uncertain. As in all of our audits, we also address the risk of management override of internal controls, including, among other matters, consideration of whether there was evidence of bias that represented a risk of material misstatement due to fraud. How we tailored our group audit scope? We tailored the scope of our audit in order to perform sufficient work to enable us to provide an opinion on the consolidated financial statements as a whole, taking into account the structure of the group, the accounting processes and controls, and the industry in which a group operates. The group is comprised of the parent company Wigton Windfarm Limited and an associate, Flash Holdings Limited, and its subsidiary. They are incorporated in Jamaica and St. Lucia respectively. A full scope audit was performed for the parent company as it was determined to be the only individually financially significant entity. Key audit matters. Key audit matters are those matters that, in our professional judgment, were of most significance in our audit of the consolidated and standalone financial statements of the current period. These matters were addressed in the context of our audit of the consolidated and standalone financial statements as a whole, and informing our opinion thereon, and we do not provide a separate opinion on these matters. Key audit matter. Impairment of investment in associate for the group and company. Refer to notes 2B, 4C, and 12 to the consolidated and standalone financial statements for disclosures of related accounting policies and balances. On 8 March 2022, the company acquired 21% of Flash Holdings Limited, Flash, and its subsidiary for a total consideration of $137.53 million. As a result of the total shareholding and certain changes to the composition of Flash's board, management concluded that it has significant influence over Flash, and consequently, that Flash is an associate of the company and group. The investment in associate accounts for $137.49 million, or 1.25% of total assets of the group, and $137.53 million, or 1.25% of total assets of the company as at 31 March 2022. Management considered impairment indicators such as the fact that the carrying value of the investment in Flash exceeds the group's share of the net assets of Flash, and accordingly performed an impairment assessment over the investment in associate balance at the statement of financial position date. The group was assisted by external valuation experts in this process and utilized a discounted cash flow DCF model to determine the value in use. We focus on this area due to the magnitude of the balance and because the impairment assessment involves significant judgment and estimation, which is sensitive to changes in key assumptions. The key assumptions were assessed by management as being discount rate, terminal value growth rate, and growth in the number of electric vehicle car sales. How our audit addressed the key audit matter? With the assistance of our valuation expert, our approach addressing the matter involved the following procedures, amongst others. Assessed the competence and capability of management's valuation expert, obtain an understanding of the process used by management to determine the value in use of the investment in associate, tested management's DCF model and the valuation assumptions and inputs by referencing the 31 March 2022 base year financial information to current year results, assessing the reasonableness of management's forecasting by comparing the forecasted information to industry and independent economic data, evaluating the discount rate by recomputing the cost of capital, and comparing the terminal value growth rate and the growth in the number of electric vehicle car sales by reference to externally derived data where available. Tested the mathematical accuracy of management's discounted cash flows by reperforming the underlying calculations. Based on the results of the procedures performed, management's assumptions and judgments relating to the carrying value of the investment in associate, in our view, were not unreasonable. Other information. Management is responsible for the other information. The other information comprises the annual report, but does not include the consolidated and standalone financial statements and or auditor's report thereon, which is expected to be made available to us after the date of this auditor's report. Our opinion on the consolidated and standalone financial statement does not cover the other information, and we will not express any form of assurance conclusion thereon. In connection with our audits of the consolidated and standalone financial statements, our responsibility is to read the other information identified above when it becomes available, and in doing so, consider whether the other information is materially inconsistent with the consolidated and standalone financial statements or our knowledge obtained in the audit, or otherwise appears to be materially misstated. When we read the annual report, if we conclude that there is a material misstatement therein, we are required to communicate the matter to those charged with governance. Responsibilities of management and those charged with governance for the consolidated and standalone financial statements. Management is responsible for the preparation of the consolidated and standalone financial statements that give a true and fair view in accordance with IFRS and with the requirements of the Jamaican Companies Act, and for such internal control as management determines is necessary to enable the preparation of consolidated and standalone financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. In preparing the consolidated and standalone financial statements, management is responsible for assessing the group and company's ability to continue as a going concern, disclosing as applicable matters related to going concern, and using the going concern basis of accounting unless management either intends to liquidate the group and or the company, or to cease operations, or has no realistic alternative but to do so. Those charged with governance are responsible for overseeing the group and company's financial reporting process. Auditors' responsibilities for the audit of the consolidated and standalone financial statements. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the consolidated and standalone financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatements, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinion. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but is not a guarantee that an audit conducted in accordance with ISOs will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. Misstatements can arise from fraud or error and are considered material if individually or in the aggregate they could reasonably be expected to influence the economic decisions of users taken on the basis of these consolidated and standalone financial statements. As part of an audit, in accordance with ISOs, we exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. We also identify and assess the risk of material misstatement of the consolidated and standalone financial statements, whether due to fraud or error, design and perform audit procedures responsive to those risks, and obtain audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. The risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than for one resulting from error, as fraud may involve collusion, forgery, intentional omissions, misrepresentations, or the override of internal controls. Obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the group and company's internal control. Evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of accounting estimates and related disclosures made by management. Conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of the going concern basis of accounting, and based on the audit evidence obtained, whether a material uncertainty exists related to events or conditions that may cause significant doubt on the group or company's ability to continue as a going concern. If we conclude that a material uncertainty exists, we are required to draw attention in our auditor's reports to the related disclosures in the consolidated and standalone financial statements, or if such disclosures are inadequate, to modify our opinion. Our conclusions are based on the audit evidence obtained up to the date of our auditor's report. However, future events or conditions may cause the group or company to cease to continue as a going concern. Evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content of the consolidated and standalone financial statements, including the disclosures, and whether the consolidated and standalone financial statements represent the underlying transactions and events in a manner that achieves fair presentation. Obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the financial information of the entities or business activities within the group to express an opinion on the consolidated financial statements. We are responsible for the direction, supervision, and performance of the group audit. We remain solely responsible for our audit opinion. We communicate with those charged with governance regarding, among other matters, the planned scope and timing of the audit and significant audit findings, including any significant deficiencies in internal control that we identified during our audit. We also provide those charged with governance with a statement that we have complied with relevant ethical requirements regarding independence, and to communicate with them all relationships and other matters that may reasonably be thought to bear on our independence, and where applicable, actions taken to eliminate threats or safeguards applied. From the matters communicated with those charged with governance, we determined that those matters that were of most significance in the audit of the consolidated and standalone financial statements of the current period and are therefore the key audit matters. We describe these matters in our auditor's report unless law or regulation precludes public disclosure about the matter, or when, in extremely rare circumstances, we determine that a matter should not be communicated in our report because adverse consequences of doing so would reasonably be expected to outweigh the public interest benefits of such communication. Report on other legal and regulatory requirements. As required by the Jamaican Company Act, we have obtained all the information and explanations which, to the best of our knowledge and belief, were necessary for the purpose of our audit. In our opinion, proper accounting records have been kept so far as appears from our examination of those records, and the accompanying consolidated and standalone financial statements are in agreement therewith and give the information required by the Jamaican Companies Act in the manner so required. The engagement partner on the audit resulting in this independent auditor's report is Tricia Ann Smith da Silva, signed PricewaterhouseCoopers, Chartered Accountants, Kingston, Jamaica, dated 7th July 2022.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Smith da Silva. Shareholders, we now turn to the director's report. May we have a motion that the director's report circulated to the shareholders by way of the annual report and the notice convening the meeting be tabled and taken as read. Shareholders who are online, you're reminded to use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Ms. Jacqueline Stewart Leckler and seconded by Mr. Theomore Brown. Shareholders, we now ask that you vote on the resolution by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen, in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in, with 94 being in favor and none against. So I declare the resolution carried. Will the secretary table the director's report?
So tabled, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Shareholders, we now move to resolution number 1. which reads, may we have a motion that the audited financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2022 be, and the reports of the auditors and directors thereon are hereby adopted. And again, shareholders, please use the raise hand feature to move and second this resolution. I now ask that we have a mover and seconder for this resolution. The motion has been moved by Mr. David Rose and seconded by Mr. Randy Aird. Shareholders, we now ask that you vote on resolution number 1 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen, in favor of or against the motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in, and as can be seen, there are 93 votes in favor and 1 against. I declare the resolution carried. Resolution number 2. May we have a motion that the special dividend of Jamaican dollar 0.0182 paid on January 17, 2022 be and is hereby ratified and declared final for the year ended March 31, 2022. Shareholders, again, you're reminded to use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Yvonne Lorraine Stewart and seconded by Courtney Graham. Shareholders, I now ask that you vote on resolution number 2 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen, in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. Shareholders, the results are in with 81 in favor and 6 against. I therefore declare the resolution carried. In accordance with Article 101 of the Articles of Incorporation of the company, the following directors retiring from office by rotation and who, being eligible, offer themselves for re-election are Messrs. Dennis Chung, Dan Theok, Nigel Davey, and Hugh Johnson. Mr. Chung is a chartered accountant by profession and holds a Bachelor of Science degree and a Master of Science degree in accounting from the University of the West Indies. He was chairman of the Audit, Finance, and Investment Committee of the board for approximately 3 years, and since the restructuring of the subcommittees of the board, is now chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee of the Board of Directors. His main areas of expertise are senior management and business leadership, accounting, finance, and governance. Mr. Dan Theok is a chartered accountant licensed by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales and is currently Senior Vice President of Investment Banking at Maybury Investments Limited. His main areas of expertise are senior management and business leadership, accounting, finance, and energy. Mr. Nigel Davey is an entrepreneur, energy professional, and qualified aeronautical engineer and commercial pilot. He's currently the managing director of Innovative Energy Company Limited. His main areas of expertise are senior management and business leadership and energy. Mr. Hugh Johnson is a certified automotive engineer who spent several years working in the field of motor vehicle assessment before embarking on a career in agriculture. His main area of expertise is senior management and business leadership. All directors mentioned here have excellent attendance and participation records, and the board is satisfied that the directors continue to make valuable contributions to the board and have demonstrated their commitment to serve. Further details on the directors may be accessed on the company's website and in the annual report. So I move to resolution number 3. May we have a motion that the director Dennis Chung, retiring by rotation pursuant to Article 101 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company. And again, shareholders, please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that the motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Michelle Chin-Len and seconded by Shanisha Grant. I now ask shareholders to vote on resolution number 3 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in with 81 in favor and 4 against. I declare the resolution carried. Resolution number 4. May we have a motion that the Director, Dan Theok, retiring by rotation pursuant to Article 101 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company. Please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Mark A. Edwards and seconded by Karen A. Dooley. I now ask shareholders to vote on resolution number 4 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen in favor of or against the motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in. We have 87 votes for and 2 against. I declare the resolution carried. Resolution number 5. May we have a motion that the Director Nigel Davey, retiring by rotation pursuant to Article 101 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company. Shareholders, please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Mr. David A. Rose and seconded by Edith R. Bernard. I now ask that you vote on resolution number 5 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in with 80 votes for and 1 against. I declare the resolution carried. Resolution number 6. May we have a motion that the Director, Hugh Johnson, retiring by rotation pursuant to Article 101 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, be and is hereby re-elected a Director of the company. Please be reminded, shareholders, to use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Renee Christie and seconded by Jacqueline Stewart Leckler. I now ask that you vote on resolution number 6 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen, in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in, and as you see on your screen, there are 86 votes for, 2 against. I declare the resolution carried. Resolution number 7. In accordance with Article 105 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, the Director, Mrs. Mariam McIntosh Robinson, having been appointed by the Board of Directors effective November 1, 2022, retires from office and being eligible, offer herself for re-election and appointment. Mrs. Mariam McIntosh Robinson is a global financial services leader with over 20 years experience. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, a Master of Business Administration from Harvard Business School, and a Master of Philosophy in Economics from Oxford University. She's currently the chairperson of Wigton's Finance and Investment Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Board of Directors. Our main areas of expertise are senior management and business leadership, finance, and engineering. May I have a motion that the director, Mariam McIntosh Robinson, retiring pursuant to Article 105 of the company's Articles of Incorporation, be and is hereby re-elected a director of the company. Shareholders, please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Nicolette Walters and seconded by Marlon C. Blake. I now ask shareholders that you vote on resolution number 7 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen, in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in with 89 votes for and 3 against. I declare the resolution carried. We now move to resolution number 8, which addresses the remuneration of independent non-executive directors. May we have a motion that the amount included in the audited financial statements of the company for the year ended March 31st, 2022, as remuneration for the non-executive directors for their services as directors be and is hereby approved. Please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Mr. David A. Rose and seconded by Jacqueline Stewart Leckler. I now ask that you vote on resolution number 8 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen, in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. results are in with 73 votes in favor and 3 against. I declare the resolution carried. I move on to resolution number 9, which addresses the remuneration of independent non-executive directors. May we have a motion that the fees of the non-executive directors for the year ending 31st March 2024 be fixed by the Nominations, Compensations, and Human Resource Committee of the Board of Directors. Please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Winston Anthony Baker and seconded by Jody Ann Olivia Dunn. I now ask that shareholders you vote on resolution number 9 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in with 67 votes for and 4 against. I declare the resolution carried. Shareholders, we now turn to the appointment and remuneration of the company's auditors, which is covered in resolution number 10. May we please have a motion that PricewaterhouseCoopers Chartered Accountants, having signified their willingness to continue in office, be appointed as auditors until the conclusion of the next annual general meeting at a remuneration to be fixed by the directors of the company. Please use the raise hand feature to move and second this motion. I now ask that this motion be moved and seconded. The motion has been moved by Mr. Mark A. Edwards and seconded by Mr. David Rose. I now ask that you vote on resolution number 10 by selecting the for or against button as it appears on your screen in favor of or against this motion. You have 45 seconds to cast your votes. The results are in with 81 votes for and 3 against. I declare the resolution carried. Shareholders, this concludes the agenda for today's meeting. Thank you for your continued support of Wigton, and I'm sure that you will agree that we had a successful meeting. Thanks to the Wigton team who made this AGM possible and successful. Continue to keep safe, and we look forward to your participation again at our next general meeting. Thank you.
Jamaica's beauty is legendary, and we have to do our part to preserve our environment. The green energy generated at Wigton Windfarm is better for our environment than fossil fuels because it decreases the amount of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide that are released into the atmosphere. Wigton's clean energy reduces Jamaica's carbon dioxide emissions by 119,000 tons, which lessens the disastrous effects of climate change like high temperatures and floods. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. Wigton Windfarm is more than a premier supplier of wind energy. At Wigton's state-of-the-art renewable energy lab, energy professionals, academics and tertiary students are trained in a range of subjects, such as photovoltaic technologies, wind, small-scale hydro, and bioenergy. And these students will become forerunners in the sector and aid its continued expansion. Wigton Windfarm, working to secure Jamaica's future. The financial and environmental costs of oil can be high. The clean energy generated at Wigton Windfarm reduces the need for fuel imported by 96,000 barrels annually, which translates to $4.9 million saved every year. And this saved foreign exchange can find its way to you through beneficial programs and projects. Because Wigton Windfarm is working to secure Jamaica's future.